Hi everyone, Miss Sarah here. Today we're going to talk about lesson 4, parts of an expression. And I just want you guys to remember that an expression is not an equation because an equation needs to have an equal sign, while an expression does not have an equal sign, okay? Okay, so over here we have an algebraic expression. Notice it doesn't have an equal sign. And the first thing you guys should be able to do is know how to separate each separate term inside an algebraic expression, okay? So the plus and the minus signs are what separate each term. So the first term we have is 9x. The second term is minus 2. The third term is plus 16x. After that we have plus 8 is a term. Then minus x is also a term. And plus 10 is a term. So you see we have 6 different terms in this algebraic expression. I also want you to notice that the signs, the plus and the minus signs, they always belong to the number that goes to the right, comes to the right of the sign. So this negative belongs to 2, the plus to the 16x, this plus over here to the 8, this negative to the x, and this plus to the 10. Notice that there's no sign in front of the 9. If there's nothing there, then you guys should know that it's a positive sign, all right? So now that we know how to identify each separate term in an expression, we have to learn how to classify each of these terms, all right? So there is a big difference between terms in an algebraic expression. Terms that contain letters, all right, like 9x plus 16x minus x, and the terms that don't contain letters, the negative 2 plus 8 and plus 10, all right? The terms that contain the letters, they are called the variable terms, all right? So 9x plus 16x minus x are the variable terms. Variable means letter in math. So maybe you guys should write this down on your notes. Variable terms are the terms with letters. So the terms with letters in this algebraic expression are going to be 9x, 16x, and negative x. All right, the terms that I highlighted in yellow are the ones that contain letters. Therefore, they are my variable terms. Notice that the plus 16x, I didn't put the plus because you don't have to put the plus, but I did write the negative x because you do have to put the negative sign, okay? The other kind of term would be the constant terms, or the terms without a variable, which are the terms that don't have letters in them. In this case, they're going to be the terms that I highlighted in blue. All right, the terms that do not have a letter in them. So negative 2 plus 8 and plus 10. All right, so let's write that down. Negative 2 plus 8. Remember, the plus I don't have to write. I can just write 8. Plus 10, I don't have to write the plus. I just write 10. So people, you do have to memorize this vocabulary, okay? You have to know what a constant term is and what a variable term is without me giving you the definition. And finally, we have to take a look at what a coefficient is, which is a number next to a variable, all right? Another way of thinking about it, and I think you guys should write this down, is that a coefficient is a number, is the number that is simply touching the letter, the number that is touching the letter. So coefficients only make sense if we're talking about variable terms, because variable terms have letters. Constant terms, they don't have letters, so that doesn't make any sense. So in the variable terms, we have 9x, 16x, and negative x. So in the 9x term, my coefficient is going to be the number that is touching my letter x, which in this case is 9. So let's go ahead and write down 9. In my second variable term, the number touching the x is 16. And in my third variable term, the number touching the x, there is no number, right? There's only a negative sign there. But then you guys have to remember that if I don't have a number, there is actually an invisible 1 in front of the x. So let's go ahead and write that down. There's an invisible 1. So my coefficient is not going to be 1. It's going to be negative 1 because that's the number that is in front of my letter, that is touching my letter. Now let's go ahead and do a few more practice exercises. Go ahead and do number 1. I'm going to highlight variable terms in blue and the constant terms in yellow. So number 1, we have 8a plus 2a minus 3. The variable terms are the terms with letters. All right, so 8a is a term that has the letter A, and plus 2a also is a variable term because it contains the letter. Once again, I didn't write the plus sign. And the constant term is the term without a variable, which is not 3, it's negative 3. Remember, the negative sign belongs to the number to the right. Now we have to find the coefficients of my variable terms, which are the numbers in front of my variables or just touching my variable. Remember, variable means letter. So in the first one, I have 8 touching the letter A, and then the second one, I have a 2 touching the letter A. So those are going to be my coefficients, all right? Number 2, I'm going to have x minus 12 minus 3x plus 22. I have 4 different terms. Once again, my variable terms are going to be the ones with letters. So x is a letter, so x is a variable term. And the 3x, which includes this negative sign, is also a variable term. Notice that negative 12 and plus 22 don't have letters, therefore they are constant terms. I'm going to highlight them in yellow. So my variable terms are going to be x and negative 3x, while my constant terms are going to be negative 12 and plus 22, but I don't have to write the plus sign. Now getting into the coefficients. My coefficients are the numbers in front of my variables. So over here, it's pretty easy to see that I have a negative 3 in front of my letter, in front of my variable, so that's going to be a coefficient. In front of this x, there's nothing, but you guys have to remember, if there's nothing, there is actually an invisible 1 over here. So my coefficients are going to be 1 and negative 3. I'm going to skip a few, go down to number 5 now, just for extra practice. Number 5, I have to identify my variable terms, the terms with letters, all right? Remember, a variable term is separated by addition and subtraction symbols. Okay, so the first variable term would be plus xy. But there are 2 variables. That's okay, guys. It's still one term with 2 variables. And the second one would be negative 2xy. The constant terms would be negative 12 and plus 9. All right, so let's go ahead and write that down. Plus xy, I can just write xy. Remember, the plus you don't have to write, but the minus 2y, you do have to write that negative sign. So it's going to be minus 2xy. And the constant terms would be negative 12, and plus 9, which I can just write 9. Moving over to my coefficients. The coefficients are the numbers in front of my letters or in front of my variables. So in this one I have a negative 2, so I know that's going to be a coefficient. And remember, over here, if there's nothing, there's an invisible 1. So my coefficients are going to be 1 and negative 2. Now I'm going to move on to number 10, identify my variable terms. I have r is a letter, so it's a variable term. Minus 2s is a variable term. Plus 2r is a variable term. And minus s is also a variable term because they all contain letters. And minus 8 or negative 8 is a constant term because it does not contain letters. So let's go ahead and write those down. We're going to have, for our variable terms, r, negative 2s plus 2r, or simply 2r, and negative s. I'm only going to have one constant term. Only one term doesn't have a variable, which is negative 8. Now for my coefficients. So we have 4 different variable terms, right? This means that I'm going to have 4 different coefficients. In front of my r, remember it's an invisible 1, so I'm going to write 1. In front of my second term, I have a negative 2, which is also going to be my coefficient. In front of my third one, I'm going to have a 2. And lastly, I have a negative sign in front of S. You guys have to remember there's an invisible 1 there, so this is going to be a negative 1. So this first part was just identifying different terms of an expression. Now we're going to start simplifying the expression, and we do that by combining like terms.